What's up, Matt?
I just realized, look at my hair.
Well, look at mine. I was just looking at mine too. Holy shit!
I hadn't even
Like
brushed my hair all day long.
I look like I look like I got a hairpiece on.
I don't know what, I got a mohawk or some kind of thing going on.
I There we go. Much worser.
So this will be the bad hair day edition.
It totally is, and yeah. So I wanted to just get together and go over the market. It seems like we got a little bit. Just first of all, we got a couple people streaming in here. Uh, Welcome to lunch with Lumbermen, Matt Lehman, Lehman's Guide, and Ashley Buckle Materials Exchange. So what's your thoughts in here, Matt? We got a little futures market going to expire, $90 premium. And the reason I'm leading with that is at some point in the next month, I was waiting to say it on this show, was that's going to come in. And
either cash is going to go up or the board's got to come in.
Futures is going to come down, and basis traders don't care. And what I'm seeing this morning is there's some stuff. Let's just kind of run through the market. What I'm thinking, the OSB mills did a good job throttling production in the last month and a half. Some of them are still off the market to certain people. They're still meeting contracts and so forth. And the cheap mills are bouncing up in price. I know one mill up in the Northeast that was at 200, 210 are now 230 and off the market. So you're starting to see play in there. So I had some buddies going to some of the docks last week, visiting them, and they said there was a lot of euros sitting on the docks. With that said, that's a lot of opportunity. And you and I both know, like, when you go look at a place where lumber is stored, it always looks like there's a lot, right? I mean,
yeah, that's the whole purpose. It is because it is a lot. It's stored.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot. So let's say sitting down in Florida, there's 10,000 trucks sitting on the ground. Well, to somebody that's never seen lumber before, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, look at all the lumber!" But those 10,000 trucks can get eaten up pretty quickly, right?
Yeah,
and they do. And if they don't, there's enough truck to sit there through the end of June. But as we know, weather clears up.
Speaking of thousands of truckloads, I saw a thing this week that a Canfor and Toco's curtailments and permanent curtailments are going to take 5,000 carloads of supply off the market, and that sounds like a lot. But over the course of a year, it's not. We could easily be over 5,000 cars of supply without a whole lot of effort. So it sounds like a lot of loss, but it's in the perspective of 75 billion board feet divided by 110,000 board feet. How many cars is that?
What was that question there, Matt? I'll pull up the thing here. Take a
look.
What
is 75 billion board feet divided by 110,000 board feet?
Yeah, so 75 billion board feet. Let's go 75 billion. So I got enough zeros here, divided by 112,000. That's 700,000 cars.
Right. So we're going to take 5,000 off the market.
Yeah.
If
you think about it, and don't hold me to this number, but if we're 4 billion board feet, less consumption than production, divided by 112,000, that's 36,000 cars.
Right. So we're still supplied 31,000 cars.
Or if you want to talk in Southern Yellow Pine terms, that's 150,000 trucks.
Yeah.
So
taking 5,000 cars off permanently is not a game changer.
Yeah, so we'll have little fits and starts and bumps and bounces and all that kind of stuff, but until we get that in line, and that could get in line too, by the way, by consumption coming back also, and that's when you get the really good runs. If you got consumption coming back at the same time product is coming off, that's what happened at the beginning of COVID, right? The thought of zero consumption while consumption was rallying and production was coming off, and then we had 4-digit numbers. Not saying we're going there, but so just the overall feeling, and I got a couple of newsletters forwarded to me from other traders in the industry that are traditionally long anyway. They're all out there pushing their customers. They need to buy now because the prices are same thing we always hear, really cheap. Business is great because it's spring. We all know that business is good in the spring because it generally is. That's why the fourth quarter is usually busy where people buy. And so I think generally there's some good value out there. Yesterday we talked, Matt, that just 2x4 spruce was probably the cheapest thing out there right now out of Canada, right?
Yeah, and you talk about we've had how long has spruce been 350 or better? Months.
Well, if you look back, if you're thinking so about a month ago, I think you put a poll out, somebody else did. Nobody thought lumber was dropping below 400 because they all said it was below cost of production. And people put floor prices in. And guess what happened? It dropped below there.
Right.
And I think you could buy in the 330s or 350s Western Canada. So last week.
Yeah, late last week. And still, I think with a good solid offer from a couple of people, you could probably buy 330 again still.
Now, to me, that's a great value.
But you know what, Ash? It's a great value, but it's kind of like when the price is $500 and everybody says, when it gets to be 350, I'm loading the boat. And I always say, no, you won't, because if it's 350, there'll be a reason why it's 350 and you're not going to want it. And we done.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody in the country had a chance to buy $350 equivalent spruce for the last 2-3 months, and they probably did. And to think that the market has been sitting here and not been bought, and people don't have substantial inventory or an adequate inventory, and if price is the motivator, they've had the opportunity to do it, and they chose not to, or they either chose to do it and they've done it, or they chose not to because there's a reason why the price of lumber is $350 and not $500.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I'm just saying today, as you sit here, one of the best things, like a guy was telling me yesterday, he could buy Canadian MSR, like straight 14s and 16s, only at a slight premium to that, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, there's a reason why that's such a tight number too, right? I mean, or Matt, to your point, everybody loaded the boat at 500 because I didn't think it was going to 350. They don't have enough room now to put it in there. But
think about everybody that's got commercial. I was thinking about apartment complexes, multifamily that have got wood. That they've got buildings that are completed, or projects that are completed with product that's over $1,000 for 2x4s in the project, and they can replace those projects with significantly less investment or cost in it. So I have a concern about those projects that are out there that are on the books that are significantly, they're $80 a square foot rather than $10 a square foot for your framing. Those things they got a cost basis in it. You could make those things be in trouble if they had to do. You got to do some refinancing, or the value of the property gets re-upped, or whatever you want to call it, or redesignated. And I think there's a possibility we could find ourselves in a credit crunch coming up this summer, despite interest rates looking like they're peaking and trying to be positive about the Fed. But the one thing that keeps coming back to me, that the Fed's objective is to slow the economy. And slowing the economy means making it difficult for having less money to borrow and less money to spend. And to me, no matter how you color it, that is not bullish for housing. And to think that we're at a spot where interest rates are going to come down and that's going to be good for housing, I have a different thought. I think that if we're at a place where the Fed's work is finally working, and we're curtailing the ability for people to secure mortgages, and banks needing to hang on to cash for fear of another run on the banks or something, I think that the interest rates are not the issue. It's going to be the availability of credit and the willingness for lenders to lend money, because they're going to need to keep some cash in case there's another bank scare.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt. The other thing that the Fed does, and I heard this yesterday watching one of the TV shows, and they had a Fed, what do they call it? One of the Fed presidents on, I believe, and he had a good point. They kept asking him, "Hey, so they should cut rates down," And he said he didn't. He said our job is to make sure inflation falls and has consecutive months of falling. Not that we think it's so. In theory, to your point, I think everybody in the general public that doesn't know anything about rates just sits there and says, "Oh, they must be done cutting now because somebody on CNBC or something said that." But the fact is, they want to see months or quarters of rates moving or of inflation moving down. And you look at the core rates yesterday, some of the core stuff like food was up 8.5% or something, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, we're not out of the woods yet by any means. We've just
No,
poked our head in.
when you when you start to see numbers that are favorable to the Fed's goal of fighting inflation, and we're just now starting to see it, that doesn't mean it's over. It just means we're just starting to work. And there's no reason to expect that it's going to turn. They're going to say, okay, we're starting to work, so let's just stop it now. They haven't really choked down spending like they want to, because consumers are still spending like drunken sailors, and credit card debt keeps going up. And one of the things I was thinking about this week that I kind of wrote about for tomorrow is that are we in a spot where where housing is going to start to increase because interest rates are lower? Or are we just starting to feel the pain? But bottom line is that the consumer's not feeling enough pain for the Fed to back off its tightening process.
Let's circle back to lumber. Shane McDonald. I don't know Shane. I don't know if I know Shane, but I'm glad he's here. And he put West Fraser's annual U.S. lumber production surpasses its Canadian output for the first time ever. I haven't seen that stat yet, but if that's a stat, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that was they wanted to come down and buy the U.S. mills, and they do a good job at producing, and they brought a bunch of their knowledge down here, and it makes sense because that's where the lowest cost fiber is, and that's what should be happening at this point, and I think we're seeing that.
Well, it's probably going to happen with every Western Canadian or BC mill or Alberta mill that is investing in the U.S. sawmills, because you can still buy them cheaper than you can build them, and they're just. I mean, when you got 25 mills in Canada and 25 mills in the South, and you start anything you shut, it's just a progression of what's of the future, what's going to happen. I saw a thing yesterday that it wasn't so much the cost of fiber, but it was the exhaustion of the fiber base in British Columbia that's becoming a concern. They're just not replenishing it fast enough, so they got to.
Could you imagine, Matt? And I guess this is more of a. Could you imagine trying to open a new mill in any province of Canada, and the hoops you got to jump through, and the fiber, and versus opening one in the Southeast United States? I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer.
When you got the people that are the best in the industry running from one section of the country running to another, you certainly don't want to do what's counteractive to what they're doing.
Yeah, no doubt about that. That's interesting. Sig just put up here, don't forget, as the Fed raises rates, the 10-year yield has come down from 4.25 to 3.3.
Well, here's the thing about interest rates in general is we got 6% rates or 5-7% rates or whatever, but
who do we got there, Matt?
This is Emery, my granddaughter.
What's up, Emery?
Good.
Hi to everybody in the lumber business.
See, there's a bunch of people watching you right now. Say, hey.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
She's going to tell me my lunch is here.
Oh, right on. Well, it's good meeting you.
No. Same to you.
So back to interest rates, Matt. What's your thought? Great girl, man. She's making your lunch for you.
No, she's telling me my Chick-fil-A's here. On rates, I think we get overly sensitive about what rates you're doing, because lenders and home builders and whoever's doing on the giving end of the mortgage is buying rates anyway. Nobody's paying 6 and 8% for mortgage rates. They're still paying 4 and 4.5 because the lenders are buying the rates down.
Especially, I think again, when I just comb through looking at, I've got a new hobby. I look at all the big public builders, and I look through all their sites, and I look at their lending, right, to see see what it is. It seems to be buying a new home is the best deal right now, right?
Probably so, yeah.
I mean, for lending, right? Because these guys are buying these rates down, and they've got that one thing where the rate is. One of them I saw the other day. The rate's solid for 2 years, and then it floats back to the market. So they give you a really good deal for 2 years, buy that down, and then it goes to a certain rate year 3.
Yeah, I think that's extremely dangerous, because to think that the market's going to go back to 3% interest rates just because it's been there and stayed there for a decade, that's still kind of that's a rarity.
Well, so not to keep talking on rates, but don't you think when you talk to people in the general public, in the back of their heads, don't they all think that once the Fed is done with this, rates will be back down to a 3% mortgage? That's the feeling I'm getting from people out there, that everybody thinks that rates are going to back to 3%.
Yeah, and quickly.
And quickly. That's what I hear from people. And I'm kind of a contrarian.
And you don't have a good reason for it other than it's just been there.
Yeah, and they feel
that's like saying lumber's going to go back to $1,700 because it's recently been there.
So my question to them when they say that is, why can't rates go to 10%?
Yeah, they've been at the team.
I'm just saying is, I mean, why couldn't rates go to 10%? Because, I mean, that's where you have to put people's heads sometimes. I don't know if it will or not. But so back to lumber, your group that you work with, Matt, and what are you hearing from people?
I just sent out a request this morning for scouting report updates, and what I got was optimistically confused.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That just came to mind. I was asking, like, what do what are you seeing? Is what's happening now for real, or is there more going on than just seasonality? Is there something else happening? And everybody seems to think that it's a combination of seasonality. Weather's better, so certainly you're going to sell more lumber. You're going to have more traffic for new homes, just traffic, and more people listing existing homes just because of the time of year that it is, getting ready for summer. If they're gonna move, they're gonna get that done. But I believe, and this is one of those I believe things without any kind of data to back it up, that the market, what's happening in the housing market is people that are not affected by interest rates or down payment or cash. They had the money. They've got 6% interest rate. Doesn't make a difference whether if they want to move up, they're going to move up. And when there seems to be still a shortage of starter homes because there's not as much money, is it? So is the 6 million home shortage all starter homes, or is it mover upper homes? But it seems like the people that are doing better in the housing market are people doing the more expensive homes, not starter homes.
Yeah, I mean, my question about this whole lumber or housing shortage has been talked about since I got in the industry in 1990. How because of demographics and because of everything, we're short homes. I'm like, okay, where's everybody living then right now if we're short so many homes, right?
There's two guys down the street for me that are living in the woods, or living on a mattress out of a grocery cart, and those are the only two people I've seen without a house.
Yeah, and I've got people living in tents around here too, but that's not because they can't afford houses. It's because of other issues. But my point is, like, I always push back on people when they tell me about the underbuilt demographics. It's like, it seems to be the market always finds a way to build what's needed, and people tend to pay for it or live somewhere they can afford.
Yeah, and they're living somewhere now. So if there's 5 million or so shortage of housing, does that mean where's those 5 million people going to move out of? And is it going to create a vacancy rate of 5 million homes that are available somewhere else?
So one thing we kind of talked about yesterday, and I like talking to you about it, is the people that watch our programs, especially all through the chain, and especially when you get to the end of the consumption chain. I had 2 home builders reach out to me after the call yesterday because I mentioned they did not want to talk on the call about it. Said, are you getting any 90-day locks like you did 3 years ago from your lumber sellers? And they said, no, everybody's still 30 days. But if we could get 90 days, we'd love it. So why aren't people going back to the 90-day locks like they used to, retail lumber yards to sell to builders if that's what they really want, Matt?
I don't think the builders are insisting on it. I think they're letting.
What I'm hearing is they don't insist on it because they don't think they can get it.
Right. They're just not asking for it.
Yeah, because they've been told from some of the big people that's their. Seems like the top 5 big people, the big yards, all went to 30 days and nobody's blinking first to go back to 90 days.
Right, and especially with prices the way that they are, if you're a contractor yard, you're a pro dealer, you don't lock in 90-day numbers that was historically a low price. But I mean, we've been there for 90 days. Nobody would have gotten hurt at 90-day lock. But 90-day lock doesn't necessarily mean that you got to lock in these numbers at what they already said. I'll give you a 90-day lock, but here's what the lock's going to be.
No doubt. But I would like to be able to, if I'm a builder, I want to compare both of them, right? And then go out to see what I have sold. Now, the thing may be the builders may not have that product sold where they don't need 90 days, right? Or there may be some other hybrid of pricing that I don't know about. But if I was a builder and I had an option of 3 different yards selling me, I would ask one to give me a 90 with a, maybe which could go out 120 days for a lock on pricing to see what it looks like. And that could be a difference maker between who gets the business and doesn't get it. I'm just curious next time you talk to your group, what their thought is and if they have people asking for that, because I could be wrong on it.
Well, I've been advising my builder subscribers to get 60-day locks by the end of April and don't do any locks in May. But we're coming into a time where you don't want to do long-term lumber locks. You want to do shorter-term lumber locks because the market's typically weaker May through August. So it kind of plays in hands. You don't really want to get a lumber lock now, and regardless of where prices are, the trend is for prices to go lower between now and August, and maybe they don't because we're at historically low or traditionally low prices. But there's nothing out there other than curtailments or the threat of curtailments to think that there's going to be some kind of lumber shortage. But like you said earlier, without an increase in demand, we're still overproduced. And I started the conversation with a futures premium, and I think futures is overly optimistic. I think builders are overly optimistic about rate cuts that are going to make spring and summer be better than what they expected. I saw one statistic guy said that he had a builder told him he was expected his spring sales to be off by 30 to 40%. It turns out now he's projecting it's going to be 5 to 10% off. So it's significant. They're expected to do significantly more. But I still think that we've got a banking issue that's not taken care of. We've got a credit crunch that's not taken care of. You got banks that are fearing a run on deposits, and they got to keep cash, because if you look at what happened to SVP and Signature Bank and what it was, First National, whatever the other one was, they basically got bailed out by other banks. So the big banks,
there's a guy on this call listening to, and we talk every now and then. I agree. But I think when you get into these big banks, I think there's enough, dependent upon, it doesn't matter what your politics are, there's enough intelligent people on both sides that have gotten together in the last 2 months and are heading that off at the pass, and will use any means necessary to make banks not fail again. I personally don't think you're going to see any of that anymore. I think that's, in my opinion, I think that the same stuff is set up for that, but I think, part of life and trading is understanding that there's the reality of what Econ 101 says, and then there's government intervention. And it never ceases to amaze me at how many bullets and how big of artillery they can throw at problems and solve it, if that makes sense.
Here's what concerns me about that whole scenario right there, is if the big banks had to get together and do something because there was something afoot, they didn't just wake up one morning and go, "Oh no, look, there's a problem." I think it's a systemic problem that when the public starts to find out about it, then you got to take some action to avert what the problem is. But I think there's a systemic problem within the banking system that you can't let the public know, because it just creates a panic. You don't have any choice but to keep it quiet and try to take care of it.
Yeah, and take care of it however you do. And it's like I said, there's a lot of smart people and non-smart people in government that when there's an issue, they all circle the wagons and figure out how to head it off at the pass. But with that said, you have a few exceptions, SVB being one of them, to start the whole process off. There's always a sacrificial lamb, so to speak.
And I don't know that they were stupid. They might have just been doing something that was on the fringe you got caught, because there's a big difference between smart bankers and smart government people. I think they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, back to our what's the what are we going to tell? What do you think the buyers and sellers should know right now? It seems to me, if I look at things, people are getting light, speculatively long right now.
Exactly.
And that's the feeling when I read everything. Everybody's looking for a reason. Hell, I was this morning, Matt. I'm looking for a reason to get excited on the market. And I think if you need to buy something and you have money in it, right now is a good opportunity to buy some stuff.
I think we're at the tail end of our spring buy, which normally starts in November, gets a big surge through the November, December, January, and then we just kind of flounder around trying to do the fill in. But I think this spring buy has been spread out from November through April, and I think we're just finishing that spring buy, and I believe we're going to end up, the market's approaching an overbought condition that just has been sneaking up on us because we've just had so much time to do it.
That's an interesting point, Matt. And one cool thing is I ride past the lumber yard on the train every morning, and decent size or mid-size contractor yard for contractors that build 1 to 10 homes a year in the suburbs. And this guy does a great job. And I love looking at his inventory. And in the last 2 weeks I've gone by, and he's built his inventory up about as high as I normally see it relative if you take out the last few years. And it always is an indicator that when weather gets good, people build inventory because that's what they normally do. And this guy's got about as much inventory as I normally see. And that's always one of my indicators. I use these strange indicators, but that yard is one of them.
Yeah, and I do the same thing, because I get my car about once a month and ride around and look at about a dozen different places, and they're all the same. Whether it's a I-joist storage place or treated or a home center or contractor yard or big pro yard, the inventories seem to rise and fall at the same time, and I agree with you. I've seen the same thing, that inventories are steadily but lightly growing.
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, and I was one in the past and still have a lot of friends. The wholesalers are out calling people, telling them how it's a great time to buy. And my feeling is it's because a lot of them have gotten spec long at this point.
Absolutely. They did it 2 weeks ago. So now the stuff's coming ready to ship. So they got to get rid of it.
Yeah, like I was telling one of the guys here today, he goes, well, this mill's off the market on OSB. I'm like, yeah, they're off the market on OSB. And I've gotten 5 people have offered me their product already this morning, right? Because they speculatively bought it. So,
yeah.
And it's a relatively new guy here. So I was explaining to him how this market works, right? Wholesalers go out, buy a bunch of stuff. People go off the market. Now they got to go out and market up to X to move it.
Yep. And you really, in most occasions, wholesalers it's kind of like a mark to market. You buy it and you hope that it goes up. You wait for print to give you the money that you can make on it. So your print plus freight delivered someplace, but you're just really only going to make it when you catch the momentum right, and you can create enough energy in the market to make it go up and get a print that gives you your profit. But kind of as a general rule, when the market's flat and you got $210 OSB everywhere, that's all you're going to be able to get for it. But then you get a lot of people that, I heard one guy yesterday said that he was quoted out of Canada 70 over random for 7/16 OSB.
Yeah, I mean, and there's still, and OSB is a lot tougher of one because there's only about 5 big producers, and if you're not in with one of them, you got to kind of find it. I'm trying to think of the question I was just going to ask you here. It was really on the top of my mind.
You got distracted by my hair. You got distracted by my hairdo, didn't you?
I got to take my fish oil so I can think of this.
Prevagen.
Yeah, there you go. What do you have coming up at Layman's Guide this week, Matt? Anything? Any more meetings?
Well, if I get everybody to come back to work because spring break's going on, all the kids are around, like you just saw. It's kind of a distraction. But one of the things that I've noticed is that, like 4th of July week and spring break week, there are typically low consumption weeks or demand weeks, and so if you guys go through your week this week and it feels like things are a little bit sloppier, it might just be a spring break kind of event kind of thing. And we're still just coming up on the best April and May, the best 2 months for demand and new starts and inquiries and that kind of thing of the year. So we ought to, what we ought to be seeing right now is we should be seeing a surge in everything. We ought to be seeing there ought to be a surge in bullishness across the board. And I'm sensing from not sensing, but just reading in the comments that I'm getting from people and hearing from people is like they're optimistic because of the time of year it is, but there's really not a whole lot of confidence going beyond April and May.
Well, I think the other thing people are looking at, Matt, is, even though I hate using this term, recency bias, right?
Yep.
So you speculatively buying something, you think you're going to make $150, $1,000 on it, right? Historically, the return on wholesale lumber in this industry is 2.5 to 3.5%.
Yep, exactly.
So you buy something at 450, a 2x4 16, and you think you're going to sell it at 650. You may want to, if you haven't been in this business long, you may understand that 10 or 15 bucks in something is a lot to make, and kind of understand that that's probably the reality we're living in for the next X amount of years.
The brokers that I've talked to are definitely doing that. They're not holding out for big profits. The ones that are holding out for big profits are looking for jobs.
Yeah, okay. No, I've seen that. I've seen that too, and that's outside of basis trading. I remember what I was going to ask you now. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. It seems to be one of the things you can see the low grade market, especially in spruce, went from a huge discount to it finally came in the last few weeks here. So what I mean by that, I was talking to a guy this morning that said he sold in the 450s or 470s Atlanta on truckloads of 2x4, 16-foot number 3 spruce, right? So if you think about that, that's right in line with where some 2 and better prices were, especially on Euro, right?
Yeah.
So that spread came in, and I think that some people should realize that where number 3 was a hard item to get away from. So I've seen some moves like that, and I think that the smart traders, and there are some, are the ones that are going to make some money, are the ones that are out there looking at these big divergences in prices and trade those kind of spreads and put that kind of wood on the ground.
Well, it's another interesting thing about low grade in general. With all the optimizations that's happened in the last decade, there's just significantly less low grade even available. And users of low grade don't really want, like pallets, they don't want you to ship them number 2, because then their customers start to expect a better quality all the time. So when the prices come together, they go, I really don't want you to send me the nice stuff in exchange for the good stuff, because I mean the utility stuff, because the customer expectation changes. They go, oh look, the number 3 and number 4 pallet material has gotten to look a little better, but it's just it's the lack of availability.
Another question for you, Matt. This is always a strange one, because it went the other way my whole life in the industry. So 1650 MSR and probably even 2100 spruce is trading at a big discount to Southern Yellow Pine 4-inch, it seems like, or somewhat. So will the truss people in the South or in the tweener states that used to use 1650, will they switch back to 1650 MSR in their trusses if they're using 2 and better Southern Pine?
I think that's a supply issue. There's just not as much SPF available, so you're having to you can use Southern Pine in number 2 Southern Pine and number 1 Southern Pine in exchange for 1650, and there's just more of it available. So
I know you got to change plates too, which probably changes the carbon profile. But I agree with what you're saying. Is I think a lot of the people that buy the Southern Pine now don't want to deal with the lack of consistency of being able to get the MSR all the time when they need it, unless they're on some kind of program where they have to take a certain amount. And with Southern Pine 2 and better, you got a lot more options where you can buy in the spot market all the time.
Well, Southern Pine is going through a transition too. That Southern Pine used to be able to get away with pencil-sized weighing all the way down the side of a board, and whatever the grade would allow, or half-inch weighing or quarter-inch weighing, or whatever it's going to be. But on trusses, if you're gonna take that spruce market, that truss spruce market, you got to have pretty much square edge product, and I think the Southern Pine producers are stepping up, making a better product for the truss manufacturers, so they can hit all those peripheral markets as well.
I think you're right. Well, listen, Matt, I kept you for 40 minutes here. I'll let you get to your Chick-fil-A.
and I'm going to go do something about this hairdo also. I got to.
I think that's the new trend anyway. I mean,
I think
maybe just
the solution's a hat.
or put a little green shade to it down the middle.
Well, that's what it's that way because I put my glasses on top of my head, and I realized I just pushed up a hunk of hair. And anyway, that's my excuse. But
All right, well, good talking to you, Matt. We'll look forward to doing this next week again. Sorry for the delay, and
All
last
right.
week I was out of the office, so we're good to go next week too.
Sounds good. Thank you guys for coming.
You bet.
Have a great day.